Hi guys, it's me, ChazRHD, and welcome to the race reaction stream here about an hour and a quarter after the 2020 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix at Imola. Sorry that I did go live late. Basically, I overestimated how quickly it would take me to get the stream ready with graphics and stuff like that. So I'll have to figure that in for the future. But we are live now finally. And in the stream, we're going to look at all the teams and react to what happened, and obviously I'll have a back and forth with you guys in the chat as to what you thought of certain drivers, certain performances, and just how the race went and how exciting it was. Of course, we'll get into driver of the day, all of that great stuff. By the way, great to see you on the chat as always, and also if you are watching after this stream is finished, great to see you watching as well. But if you have not seen the race today and you don't know the results, well, here they are. So Lewis Hamilton wins the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix from Valtteri Bottas in second. Daniel Ricciardo third, his second podium in the last three races. Who would have thought in 2020 that Daniel Ricciardo was going to get two podiums in a Renault after how poor last season was? I didn't think that would be the case, and it really is a massive surprise that that has happened. Daniel Kvyat, P4. Who would have thought coming into this weekend that he was going to finish in fourth place? And then Charles Leclerc for the home team, Ferrari, in fifth. Not the highest placed home team car, though. That goes to Daniel Kvyat and the Alfa Tauri. Sixth, Sergio Perez. Seventh, Carlos Sainz. Eighth, Norris. Ninth, Raikkonen. And 10th, Antonio Giovannazi. And then finishing the race, but not finishing in the points, Nicholas Latifi, Sebastian Vettel, Lance Stroll, Romain Grosjean, and, well, Alex Albon might as well be a retirement, considering how he ended the Grand Prix. We'll get into that later on. But he was officially the last runner across the line. And your retirements, Russell, Verstappen, Magnussen, Ocon, and Gasly. So those are the results. But now, let's go team by team and see how they did and how their race went from lap 1 to lap 63. So first off, of course, Mercedes. And Mercedes, as you can probably see on the bottom ticker, if you don't know already, Mercedes have won the 2020 Constructors World Championship. And of course, they deserve it. Let's face it, they were Constructors World Champions after the first day of preseason testing. We knew this was going to be the case. It's not a surprise, but it is still a fantastic and great achievement by this team. They have now broke a record of being the first team ever to win 7 consecutive Constructors titles. That takes them ahead of Ferrari, who of course won 6 in a row from 1999 to 2004. Again, proving why in this Grand Prix and in this season, they have proved why they are the best team, in my opinion, of all time. And this 2020 car is the best car of all time. And when you look at the history of Mercedes in Formula 1 as a works team, don't forget that they were around in 1954 and 1955 as a works team and completely obliterated everyone back then as well. And, of course, pulled out because of the Le Mans crash in 1955. Who knows what would have happened if they continued? So, yeah, just they are the best team ever. This Mercedes team is the best team ever. Are they the, historically best team ever? No. But in terms of a certain team from a certain period, this team beats every other team into the dust as far as I'm concerned. Anyway, on to the drivers and how they performed. So first off, Lewis Hamilton. So did not get a good start at all. Just didn't get away well. Max Verstappen got past him. Pierre Gasly and Daniel Ricciardo almost got past him at the start as well. And he dropped into third. Then, because he couldn't really follow Max Verstappen, the only thing he could really do was try the overcut after Valtteri Bottas and Max Verstappen pitted, which is exactly what he did. And when Valtteri and Max pitted and were very close on track, and Valtteri, as we'll get onto in a moment, had damage to his car, Lewis Hamilton did what he is so great at and what great champions are so great at. Producing his best form when it is most needed. So, of course, when Bottas and Max pitted, he put in just some great laps, some really great laps that pulled the gap to Bottas and Verstappen. And yes, the virtual safety car came out, and that did help, him have a bigger lead when he came out of the pits into the lead. But I think he would have come out into the lead anyway when he pitted, because he had built enough of a gap between himself and his teammate Valtteri Bottas. So, without a doubt, Lewis Hamilton, the deserving winner today. Without his damage, would Valtteri Bottas have won the Grand Prix? I don't think we can say. Because Valtteri, as we'll get onto him now, he had damage to his car from lap 2 on because of debris lodged in his floor or side pod that came from, I think, the Ferrari of Sebastian Vettel. So we can't say because we don't know what his real race pace was actually like. I will say, though, in the first stint, considering that he did have damage to his floor, his pace must have been pretty good because he was still 2-3 seconds ahead of Max before, he came into the pits with the hard compound tyres. So maybe he would have won the Grand Prix today, but I don't think we can say because, again, we don't know what the real pace would have actually been from Valtteri Bottas. And it is a shame because his pole position lap was very, very good and one of his best of his entire career. To beat Lewis Hamilton at this circuit by a tenth of a second, it really does take a monumental effort to do that. But, that's just the way it is. That's just the way it is. It happens in Formula 1, these things. But yeah, Mercedes, they had obviously the best pace out there. Max Verstappen did give them some trouble, but that's only because Max Verstappen is so great, not because the Red Bull car is any good, or anywhere near, rather, the Mercedes in terms of pace. But before we go on to Red Bull, the next team, guys, let me know in the chat, what did you think of them today? And, with them wrapping up the Constructors title, are they, in your opinion, the best team of all time? Yes or no? Let me know in the chat. As I'm just going to quickly wipe my nose. And then I'll come back in just a moment. Right, so let's see what you guys are saying in the chat. By the way, thank you for the donation by, who was it before? Oh no, it's Count Blah. So it's just translating into £7.70 something. But Count Blah, thank you very much for the donation of $10, and he says thanks for all your work, man. Listen to the quality watch along at work. Thank you very much for watching it and, still sticking by me and being as loyal as you are. I'll never forget that. So thank you very much for that. And again, thank you for the donation. And by the way, if anyone out there does want to donate, you can, but you don't have to. And I will say, in the current, let's say, climate of the planet, especially economic climate, I will not be, one of those YouTubers that asks for donations, because I don't think in the current climate it is a very appropriate thing to do. So if you want to donate, it's your choice, but I don't care if you do or not. If you don't, then, it's fully understandable, because again, of the way the world is at the moment. Right, let's look at some comments here. Crystal Racing saying and agreeing that Mercedes are the best team of all time. And I think that's the thing. And Razor, also thank you for your comment you posted earlier. Saying it was great to see me back. Thank you very much for that. Says Mercedes are pretty much guaranteed champions in 2021. And that is the case. But I think that really does just nail down that this team is absolutely, without debate, the best team of all time. Because they've won a Constructors title this year, and they're going to win it next year. So that's going to be 8 in a row. 8 in a row. Even back in 2014-15, we knew Mercedes were the best team, and they were dominant, but we did not think it would go on this long. So I think you have to just say, and just give credit to this team for being able to keep their spot at the top, because they have been under threat since 2017. Ferrari started making better cars and illegal power units and all of that. But, you know, the competition has increased compared to 2014, 15, 16. So you do have to give them credit for being able to maintain their spot absolutely on top. And I'll be honest, even though there's a massive new set of regulations coming in 2022, I do not see this team being beaten anytime soon. I don't see it. If they are to lose a Constructors title to someone in 2022 or 2023, I will not believe that they are going to until it is actually confirmed that they cannot win it. As long as they can win the Constructors and Drivers with Lewis Hamilton in their car, then in my view, they will always be winning the Drivers and Constructors. I don't see this team ever losing until I am proven otherwise. I just don't see it happening, I'm afraid. Right, let's have a look at some other comments quickly. Kayvon Mansfield saying, yes, definitely the best team ever. Trotter saying the laps Lewis put in before the VSC were immense. Well, as I said a moment ago, that is the difference between a good driver and a great driver. A great driver does what he did. A good driver maybe would have, you know, pulled out a slight gap compared to what it was, you know, before that other driver pitted, but they wouldn't have, you know, clawed in the gap they were behind and then extended to the point of being able to come out ahead of that driver, which is what he did to Valtteri Bottas. That is, again, the difference between a great driver and a good driver. And Lewis Hamilton, was he great this weekend? No, he probably wasn't. But he was great when he needed to be, and that's all that matters. And, yeah, again, hallmark of a great driver. Right, let's read out one final comment, and then we'll get to the next team, Red Bull, because I've got plenty to say about Red Bull and a certain driver there. Crystal Racing says Hamilton is a legend, but Bottas does prove how good Mercedes is because his race pace and consistency is more average. I mean, yeah, Mercedes are a great team, but, you know, you still have to get the job done because, you know, you have drivers out there like Max Verstappen just outperforming and dragging their car to such an extent that they can actually be in the fight somewhat. So, I mean, yeah, the car, it's amazing. The team is amazing. But, you know, still got to do the job. I will say again, even though Valtteri finished second today, and I don't think we can absolutely say that he wouldn't have won. Let me rephrase that. I don't think we can say he drove poorly today. I'll say that rather than what I just said. I don't think we can say he drove poorly today. Because again, of that damage, and we don't know how quick he would have been. Because maybe if he didn't have that damage, he would have pulled out such a gap in the first stint that Lewis Hamilton wouldn't have been able to do the overcut. We don't know. We just don't know. But I think Bottas has had a good weekend. Again, a proper driver's circuit where you find out who the real top drivers in the field are around a place like this. And, you know, in qualifying, out-qualified Hamilton by a tenth of a second and was leading comfortably in the first stint. And only, you know, dropped back because of the damage to his car. That wasn't his fault. So, good weekend for Bottas. He should not be disheartened at all by what has happened. Anyway, on to Red Bull. So, let's start with Max Verstappen, even though he's not the driver on screen right now. So, Max Verstappen, I thought today drove great. Got into second place ahead of Lewis Hamilton. Kept up with Bottas quite nicely. And also pulled a slight gap to Lewis Hamilton when he was ahead of him. After he got ahead of him at the start of the Grand Prix. And he was driving great. Tried the undercut. Did Max Verstappen on Valtteri Bottas, but it didn't work out simply because the hard compound tyre would not warm up in time for him to get the undercut he needed to get past Bottas and possibly start chasing after Lewis Hamilton. I think Max Verstappen could have been in the lead of the Grand Prix once Lewis Hamilton pitted if Max had undercut past Bottas, because I think it definitely did help Lewis that Valtteri was ahead of Max, because I think Max was definitely quite a lot quicker, and we saw that once Max got past Bottas. And then, once he got past, because of Valtteri making mistakes, because of the damage to his car, pulled away very nicely and was matching Lewis Hamilton for pace. But then suffered a freak tyre failure coming down to the Villeneuve chicane on the entry, and yeah, there was nothing he could do. Definitely no warning he would have had about that, and I don't think that was due to tyre wear. I think that must have been due to picking up some debris. That's the only thing you can really say, because again, the tyres were wearing quite a bit, especially the people who were on soft tyres, but he was on the hard compound tyre, and people who were on that tyre were getting by just about fine. So I don't think it was due to tyre wear. I think it was down to simply picking up some debris. And it is a shame for Max because he drove so great today, but that's just what happened. And then of course that caused a safety car, and that's what led to Daniel Kvyat's amazing restart under the safety car, or after the safety car, leading to him getting 4th place. We'll get into that later on. But Alex Albon, this was a massive weekend for him. I thought in qualifying, pace-wise, I thought he did well to be only 4 tenths off Max. Yes, he was in 6th place, but he still had definitely the ability to be, P4 in the Grand Prix, and with Max retiring, he definitely could have got 3rd place if he had got a good start. But unfortunately for Albon, did not get a good start, lost position to Charles Leclerc, and was under pressure from Daniel Kvyat basically for the entire Grand Prix. And the pace, was looking okay coming to the last 10-15 laps. Before the safety car came out. And then when the safety car came out, he stayed out, I believe. He did stay out, and he was in P5, right behind Leclerc and Ricciardo, and you're thinking, right, at least try and get one position, up from where you are. But what does he do? Loses position to Daniel Kvyat, and then on the exit of the Villeneuve chicane, nothing to do with the Red Bull car, even though he did have a spin in qualifying that I think was down to the Red Bull car's instability. Comes out the Villeneuve chicane, simple enough exit of the corner, and he spins and drops to the back and finishes down in 15th place. Now, I've been saying this season that there has been times where I think Albon has done well, considering the circumstances that Red Bull is Max's team and it's built towards Max, and Max gets, new parts on his car before Albon and more support and all of that. And Red Bull don't always give him the best strategy and all that. But with that mistake he made, I'm sorry, but Alex Albon is done at Red Bull Racing. And not only is he done at Red Bull Racing, I think he's done in Formula 1. I do not see the justification of keeping him in that car. He cannot go a weekend without making a mistake, a big mistake. And he cannot go a weekend without, putting in a performance either in qualifying or the race that just isn't good enough. So I'm afraid Albon has to go. It's over. I don't think they'll get rid of him before the season is over, because Red Bull are second in the Constructors and they're going to finish there. So they're not exactly at risk of losing position to Renault, McLaren or Racing Point. But for 2021, there is absolutely no justification for keeping him in that car. And with Gasly in the AlphaTauri next year, I honestly think that Red Bull have got to go for Sergio Perez, a driver today who I thought was one of the drivers of the day. And we'll get onto him later and, how he was robbed of a podium by his own team. But Sergio Perez, look at the driver standings, down below. He is 6th place in the driver standings, only 13 points behind Daniel Ricciardo, who is 4th. And remember, Sergio Perez has missed 2 races through COVID. So if they're debating whether they should go for or whether, stay with Albon or go for Perez, it's not a debate. It's not a debate at all. If that is the the options for Red Bull, Albon or Perez every fucking day of the week. And if they keep Albon over Perez, then they are being extremely, I think, arrogant of their own driver academy, to be honest. Because I mean, yeah, they've got Gasly, who's good. And Kvyat, I think, has had a decent season. Nothing good or great, but decent. And obviously Max Verstappen is, a great driver. But Alex Albon is yet another Red Bull Academy driver in the last few years that simply has not been ready or able to be racing at Red Bull and at that part of the grid. And there is no justification to keeping him in that car ahead of a driver like Sergio Perez or even a driver like Nico Hülkenberg. But as far as I'm concerned, the driver who should be in that car for next year is Sergio Perez, because he's the best out of those three: Hülkenberg, Albon, Perez. But yeah, Albon, he's done. He's done. And he's not only done at Red Bull, he's done in Formula 1. No one else in the grid, or on the grid rather, is going to hire him for next year. Maybe in 2022 someone will go for him, but I think Albon honestly is done in Formula 1. Nice guy, but we all know what happens to nice guys. They always finish last. And today, he did finish in last place. Guys, let me know in the chat, what you thought of Max's race, what you thought of Red Bull's race. And for Alex Albon, what do you think is his future in Formula 1? And do you think he will be at Red Bull next year? And if you don't think he'll be at Red Bull, who do you think Red Bull will put in that car, or should put in that car rather, or both? Let me know in the live chat right now, and I'll read out some of your comments before we go on to Spinala City in a few moments. Right, let me just have a look to find the best comments here. Russia says, I hope Red Bull does not place Tsunoda in the second Red Bull, but it will probably happen because they are Red Bull. This is the thing that's so weird, and they mentioned it on Sky F1 during the broadcast about how Honda wants Tsunoda in that car. Has no one clocked onto the fact that Honda are leaving Formula 1 at the end of 2021? So why the fuck should Red Bull be listening to Honda as to who to put in an AlphaTauri when they're going to fuck off anyway for 2022? I really don't get why, that logic. I don't get it at all. It makes no sense. Why would you listen to Honda when they are literally going to be leaving this time next year? I don't get it at all. Red Bull need to go for the best driver lineup they can, because I think next year, if AlphaTauri can get a bit luckier with reliability, that has been probably their biggest Achilles heel this season, I think AlphaTauri could next season finish in the top 5 or 6 in the Constructors, because they've got a good car and Gasly, who's very, very good. And I think Red Bull have got to keep the same lineup. Daniel Kvyat has not had, in my view, a bad season. The only problem that Daniel has had is simply that in qualifying, he has been too slow. And that's why in the races, when he does progress up the field, and he has plenty of times, he's had plenty of very good race performances. But the problem is, because he starts so low down most of the time, you don't get to see how good he really has been this season. And that's why I think they should keep him, because as long as he can either, improve his qualifying performances, or AlphaTauri can replicate what they did this weekend in qualifying and be that quick, say, most of the time next season, then I think next season you'll see Kvyat be very good, and with Gasly being very good. So I honestly do not think that they should, get rid of Daniel. Still a very important driver to have for that team. Also very experienced. He's been in Formula 1 since 2014. He's been, to hell and back in this sport. I think it'd be better to keep. And there's no point going for Yuki Tsunoda when, Honda are going in a year anyway. JB, great to see you in the chat. He says Verstappen did great, was also patient with Bottas, very unlucky. Yeah, again, he was great, but he doesn't get any help, does Max? I mean, he has been... I honestly think he's been amazing this season, because that Red Bull car is not good. It is not a front-running car at all. It really isn't. The only front-running car on the grid is the Mercedes car. And, you know, when you compare that to last year, when we had 3 front-running cars, the Mercedes, the Ferrari, and the Red Bull, I think you have to say Max has been one of the drivers of the season. And I think if you look at qualifying this season and you look at the fact that Max has always been a lot closer to the cars behind him rather than the cars ahead, I think that proves that this Red Bull car is not a front-running car. It's an upper midfield car. And that's why I do sympathise to a degree with Alex Albon, because he hasn't been given, as I said earlier, the best support that, you know, he could have had from this team and from Honda as well for 2020. And yeah, Max this season, he's been great. He really has been great. I don't think anyone can deny that. Let me have a quick look. Find a few more comments. By the way, hello to Mike in the chat. Francisco saying Perez passing Albon around the outside at the Villeneuve chicane and then spinning it on his own sealed it officially. Yeah, as I said a minute ago, that spin, that was basically, you know, the final scene in his movie, I guess, for Formula One. If he was to have one. Not that he is, but you know what I mean. That's the final scene that Red Bull need to see. But I will say, in the last 2 races, and apparently Red Bull were going to base a lot their decision on whether to keep Albon or get rid of him on Portimao and Imola, you have to say he's not done good enough. I think qualifying, his pace has been good enough, but his race performances have just simply not cut it. And I think they've got to get rid, because, you know, they can do a lot better, I think, than Alex Albon. I think Sergio Perez is definitely better. Right, let me have a quick look, see if there's any other comments I've missed. Yeah, Faust saying, bring Perez to Red Bull. Let me have a quick look to see if there's any other good ones that I've missed. JB saying, I think Albon deserves to stay in F1. Everyone said Gasly didn't deserve to stay in F1 after his Red Bull, but look at him now. Well, to be honest, I don't think everyone was saying that he didn't deserve to be in F1 Gasly. I definitely didn't say that. I remember saying that I think he should have been dropped back to Toro Rosso, which I think was the best thing to do, because Gasly simply was not ready for that pressure. He wasn't ready. He needed another year in the Toro Rosso. I never thought Gasly was not good enough. He was good enough. He just needed to go back to Toro Rosso and reprogram himself. But with Albon, it's different. Because at least with Gasly, in his first year in Toro Rosso, his first full year in 2018, there were performances there that you could say, yeah, this guy, he's going to be something in Formula One that we're going to have to look out for. If you look at the first half of 2019 when Albon was at Toro Rosso, what did Albon do that was so good? He didn't really do anything. He had some good points finishes here and there, but he didn't have a great first half of 2019. He wasn't even the best Toro Rosso driver in 2019. That was Daniel Kvyat, in my view. If you compare Kvyat and Albon, Kvyat was better. Kvyat out-qualified him more, out-raced him, got a podium. So it's different, because Albon, it's not like Albon showed that, yeah, he has got something quite possibly special. He didn't show that. He showed that he's basically, when put in a midfield car, he is a midfield driver, which, again, there's nothing wrong with that, but is he good enough out of, the midfield quality of drivers to be on the grid? I don't think so. Right, let me see if I can find another one. By the way, thank you to Frederick for a super chat. Thank you very much. And he says, for $5, I wanted to do this. I hope you've had a good week. Yeah, I've had an okay week. Didn't start off good, but it's finished very well. Thank you very much for that, mate. Really do appreciate it. Anyway, I think we'll move on from Red Bull and we'll go on to Ferrari. You had an interesting race. I wouldn't say a good race. Charles Leclerc finished in 5th place. I think that's more, again, as I've said this weekend and really for the last 2 or 3 races. I think that's really Charles Leclerc being so good rather than the Ferrari car being good. And I know people keep going on about, oh, the Ferrari car has improved and all of this. I don't understand why people think it has. If it has, then why is Sebastian Vettel still not able to get anywhere near qualifying in the top 10? I'm sorry, I'm refusing to believe that until I see further evidence. That if that car is a lot better than it was, then why is Sebastian Vettel still racing with Alfa Romeos and Haas's? Yes, I know the car is not as suited to him as it is Leclerc, but Sebastian Vettel is not a bad driver. This is a 4-time world champion. So I refuse to believe that Ferrari have improved their car. I think it's simply Charles Leclerc has the car suited exactly to what he wants, similar to Max Verstappen at Red Bull, and he's getting the best out of it. I don't believe Ferrari have improved their car whatsoever this season. So yeah, we'll start with Charles Leclerc. Good start. And really good race. He didn't really do anything during the race spectacularly. Didn't overtake anyone. He did have to defend from Sergio Perez a couple of times, and he did well to hold off Sergio Perez to get an important 5th place to make sure Ferrari do not lose too many points to AlphaTauri. They did actually lose 2 points to AlphaTauri today because of Kvyat finishing 4th. But yeah, good drive. Very good drive from Leclerc, considering that his qualifying wasn't as good as maybe he was hoping, and I was fearing the worst for him in the Grand Prix. And then Sebastian Vettel, we go on to next. I, again, feel so sorry for the guy. Yes, he's not in form, but he hasn't been really in the last few races, in my view anyway, been driving poorly. He's been doing the best he could with what is a very poor handling car and a car with no power. And he, today, was not helped whatsoever by his team. So, starting on the medium tyre back in 14th place. Had a not so great start, hitting Kevin Magnussen and forcing him to spin, and I think maybe losing a slight part of his front wing. Yeah, not great start. But then, once all the cars ahead that started on soft compound tyres pitted, he kept running on the medium tyre, and it got to the point where when he pitted around the mid-30s in the race, 35, 36 laps, I think he did, on that compound. Or maybe more. Maybe he went to lap 40. I can't remember exactly. It was looking like that maybe he could nick a point or two. And with the safety car that came out, he probably would have finished in 8th or 9th place at least. But then, he comes in for his pit stop. Comes right into the box. Hits his marks. And Ferrari do what they... They're the only team that can do this. The only team that can do this. When everything is going well and there is no real pressure on them to perform because of how shit they've been. They're the only team on the grid that can do this. Royally fuck up a pit stop. And I have to say, all hail to the Ferrari mechanics for yet again destroying one of their drivers' races, and all hail to Ferrari for yet again destroying Sebastian Vettel's weekend. Absolute shithouse of a team, I have to say. Awful pit stop. The left rear won't go on, and then the right front took about a million years to go on. Yeah. And then he dropped back to, 15th place, was trying desperately to stay ahead of Nicholas Latifi. in an epic battle for 15th place. And then the safety car came out, but he couldn't really make positions up, and he finished in, was it 12th place? Yeah. Very disappointing for him. He didn't put a foot wrong this weekend. It's just that car is really poor. It's really, really poor. And that team is really poor. 13-second pit stop. In these days in Formula 1, that is not even horrifically bad. It is cataclysmically bad. 13-second pit stop. I feel so sorry for the guy because, I mean, I have criticised him in the past couple of years for, spinning and underperforming at times. But this season, despite a couple spins at times, I think this season, most of the time, he's done the best he could with what he has been given. And what he's been given is a load of shit. An absolute heap of shit. So I do feel sorry for the guy. But yeah, Ferrari, 10 points. Come away from this Grand Prix. Considering how bad their car is, that's pretty good. But that's not because they have a good, or, because the team did well today. It's because Charles Leclerc is so, so good. Yeah, guys, let me know in the chat what you thought of the Clown Show's race today. Let's have a look. Crystal Racing. Ferrari actually looked good until Vettel's abysmal pit stop. Yeah. And that's the thing, during the race, I was actually watching Vettel's gap to the rest, and I thought, you know what? He won't come out ahead of the McLarens, but he'll be pretty close behind them, and with, fresher tyres, he might be able to have a go if something happens to the McLarens or something happens ahead. And of course, we've got a safety car, so you never know what could have happened. But then the team just, he comes into the pits and the team are like, oh, sorry, Seb. You've driven great today. You really, really have. But I'm afraid it's time for us to completely tank your race because we are incompetent as all fuck. And that is what they are. They are completely, completely incompetent. And an awful team. An awful team. This is supposed to be the great Ferrari, the great Ferrari that always is up there winning Grand Prix, doing the best they can and hiring the best of the best and all of that. And they are an absolute joke. Absolute joke. By the way, to Geordie in the chat, I have seen what you sent me on Discord. I'm pretty sure I mentioned it earlier about Vettel, or not Vettel, but Bottas having debris in his car that caused the damage to his floor. Prussia that says they should make a clown cosplay at the next race, and they should set up a circus tent in the pits as their pit boxes. Well, sometimes when they set up a tent on the grid, they could just set up a circus tent right there and then if it's, raining. That's another thing. It was Halloween yesterday, so why weren't they dressed in their, Well, actually, no, they were dressed in Halloween gear because they were dressed, as normal human beings. Today, they, dressed as they normally do, clowns. So they were actually dressed up yesterday in a attire that is not normally of their own. Crystal Racing says, Seb wants to spend more time with Kimi. Didn't you know they were best mates? JB says, I think Vettel just has no confidence or motivation in the Ferrari. Doesn't have a car that suits him or the team doesn't back him. Absolutely bang on the money. Tonka says, the only good decision they have made I can think of is getting Leclerc. Well, yeah, nailing him down to a long contract and basically as the number one driver of the team. Very good decision because he is a very good driver and one of the best on the grid. So that's a great decision, but if they don't give him a good enough car, then it's going to be a complete waste of money, paying him that much money a year, you know, for him to not be able to get the results he should because the team cannot provide him a good enough car. And we know in 2021, Ferrari are not going to be winning Grand Prix. Maybe they'll improve a bit or slightly to podiums for the two drivers, Charles Leclerc and Carlos Sainz, for next year, but they're not winning a Grand Prix in 2021. Absolutely not. In 2022, we'll see. I mean, who knows what's going to happen in 2022, but next year, it's going to be more of the same bullshit, I'm afraid. Let me have a quick look. See if I've missed any comments. JB says, Leclerc has been penetrating that Ferrari. Vettel was unlucky with the very slow stop. Interesting choice of words there. Or Charles Leclerc's driving. If there's any more. Crystal Racing says, Leclerc's accidentally signed up for 4 more years of hard labour in the gulag. Yeah, he has. He will be set free, though, for 2025. Probably be too late, though. I think I have said this before, though, that with Charles Leclerc at Ferrari, it does remind me a lot of when Jean Alesi, for a brief time, was their #1 driver and probably he was their most talented and probably quickest driver in the early to mid-90s. And how Ferrari, despite him having enormous amounts of talent and being amazing at times in terms of his speed and his driving, especially in wet weather, could never give him a car that was good enough to go for the World Championship because they were just as bad back then as they are now. I think Charles Leclerc is going to end up being the same. He's actually a very similar driver to Jean Alesi. You know, ballistically quick, great in all conditions. Can get over emotional at times. Jean Alesi definitely could. They're from the same part of the world, basically. And because Ferrari are not going to give him a good enough car, I don't think, during his time, he's going to end up with the same fate. He's going to end up leaving in 4 or 5 years and going to a better team, but probably a better team that still isn't able to win a world title, and it'll probably be too late for him. And that's why with Charles Leclerc, even though I do think he is good enough to win possibly 2 or 3 world championships once Lewis Hamilton retires, for example, I'm not sure it's a guarantee he'll ever win a world championship or even compete for one, because he has to get in a good enough car for him to do that, and I'm not sure that Ferrari will give him that that in the next few years. I know people will say, oh, but 2022, they're working on that. Everyone's working on that, particular new set of regs. Doesn't mean Ferrari, just because they're working on it now, does not mean they are going to be so amazingly quick. Because, even though, let's say they do improve, they've still got to be the greatest team of all time in Mercedes. Red Bull, who will have Max Verstappen still, so will still be a force, I guess, you reckon with. McLaren with Mercedes power will be good, and they are improving as a team all the time. Renault with Alpine, when they become Alpine, with Fernando Alonso and possibly Pierre Gasly for 2022. They're going to be strong if they continue the progress. Racing Point become Aston Martin and will have Sebastian Vettel in their team, so they'll be strong. So, if you're a Ferrari fan and you're thinking, 2022 Ferrari are going to come back and, be right back where they should be, what makes you think that? What makes you think that? Yes, of course, we don't know what the pecking order is going to be in 2022, but given how the team is run from the top down, what makes you think Ferrari are going to suddenly be winning races in 2 years? Because I don't see it at all. I mean, if they do get a car in the next couple of years that is good enough to win races again, then great. But I am not going to believe it until I see it, because I don't believe they will be winning races anytime soon, because that team is run like an absolute shit show. And I mean, forget talking about will this team ever win a world title in the next decade, because as long as Binotto is team boss, it ain't happening. Not in a million years. Anyway, let's move on from them and go to McLaren, who today and really this weekend were very lackluster. They were. Qualifying was, what, 9th and 10th. Best they could do, really. They weren't as quick as AlphaTauri or really Renault or Red Bull and Mercedes. So they had, what, 5th best car, and really looked the same today in the Grand Prix. Benefited, of course, from Albon having his problem and Max having his problem and Gasly having his problem. But pace-wise, McLaren had no real pace this weekend, which is a bit of a surprise, because I thought they would have been, maybe not, in the top 5, but they would have been, maybe P6, P7, and very close to getting there. But this weekend didn't really have any real pace. So, for all those McLaren fans out there, and I'm sure there definitely are McLaren fans watching, yeah, it's a shame, but they didn't have the pace this weekend. They didn't really make any mistakes, the drivers or the team. It was just simply the car was not quick enough around this track. I think in Turkey, though, they will be not massively better, but it will be, slightly better. So they'll probably be more, say, 7th than 9th or 10th, in qualifying and the race. But yeah, around this track today, they just didn't have, or, this weekend just didn't have real pace. Drivers tried all they could to make moves. Carlos Sainz was trying desperately to get past Daniel Kvyat before the safety car, but he couldn't do it on the fresher and softer tyre that he was on. He was on the medium. Daniel was on the hard. Lando, again, he was, put on the medium to try something, but he just couldn't make moves, because McLaren simply did not have the pace. And I was saying the Grand Prix, they probably had the 6th best car. And, considering they're in a fight for 3rd in the Constructors, that is not going to cut it if that's where they're going to be from, now till the end of the season. They've got to get back to how they were, say, at Monza or Nürburgring or the Russian Grand Prix. They've got to get back to that sort of pace, because this weekend it just simply wasn't good enough, I'm afraid. But the other Renault Power team, the Renault Works team, had another great weekend. Daniel Ricciardo getting on the podium. What a result. Don't think anyone saw it coming, because the Renault was not... It wasn't the quickest midfield car this weekend, and in the race it wasn't the quickest car again. But as usual with Daniel Ricciardo, and he's done this so many times in his Formula 1 career, he's so Fernando Alonso-esque, is Daniel Ricciardo, and that's why I think he is so good. He, when he needs to produce an overtake at the absolute right moment, he does. When he needs to hold on for a position, like he did at the end, to hold on to the podium ahead of Kvyat, he does. And when he needs to produce pace at a certain time to get, a good qualifying position or a good race result, he does. And that's why, for me, Daniel Ricciardo is definitely still one of the top 5 or 6 on the grid. And this season has been definitely top 5 drivers of the season, without a doubt. For Esteban Ocon, it simply wasn't a good enough race for him. His pace wasn't good. He was down in, 16th place behind a Williams. No real pace this weekend. Well, yeah, he did have pace in practice, and I think in qualifying he could have done better, but yeah, didn't do a good enough final run in qualifying. Didn't have enough pace, and then in the race, didn't really have enough pace either. And I think they made a mistake, Renault, pitting him so early. And I know he retired with a problem, but, he didn't have the pace anyway. But they should, if they could have left him out to do an overcut. Because I think that was a better option for him if he was going to finish anywhere. But for Daniel Ricciardo, 3rd place, Great drive, very good start. Almost got past Lewis Hamilton for 3rd place, so it was a very, very good start. Unusual for an Australian to have so many good starts. That must be illegal in some way. Yeah, great drive. And on this team goes. And we'll get onto it later. That result of Daniel Ricciardo has moved Renault into a very good position. And I'll go finally onto Racing Point before I come back to you guys in the chat to hear what you guys have to say about this, or these 3 teams in this epic battle for 3rd in the Constructors. Racing Point blew it big time today. So Lance Stroll had an absolutely pathetic Grand Prix, I have to say. Making contact with Magnussen, losing his front wing, pitting, and then didn't really have any pace to get back through the field. And then, overshot his pits when he came in for a pit stop under the safety car and hurt one of his mechanics. Just a really poor weekend. And Lance Stroll, ever since, and I think it was JB who said it in the Discord during the race, but Lance Stroll has not been the same since that crash in Mugello. As before that crash, he was performing really well. I mean, in that Mugello Grand Prix, he was probably on for a podium before that crash or that tyre failure that was very scary for him at probably the quickest part of the circuit. And then, since that crash at Mugello, Russia, he had a problem in qualifying and didn't have great pace. In the Grand Prix, got took out by Charles Leclerc, even though I don't think Leclerc, could have really done anything about it. Missed the Nürburgring race through COVID. Had really good pace in Portimao, but made really stupid mistakes. First in practice, I think, and then in the Grand Prix of Lando Norris. And then this weekend, again, not good enough pace, and in the race was just not good enough. Lance Stroll has got to reset and go again because his team needs him to. As a Racing Point are going to finish 3rd in the Constructors, they cannot afford to have only 1 driver up there getting the points. They need 2 if they're going to absolutely seal the deal. Because I actually think Racing Point have the quickest car out of that 3-team battle. I think Racing Point do have a quicker car than Renault and McLaren, but the drivers aren't always getting the best out of it that, say, Sainz and Norris are with their McLaren, or Ricciardo is with his Renault. So got to do better there, has Stroll. And I think Perez definitely could have done better yesterday in qualifying as well. Talking of Sergio Perez, I'm going to say it. I thought today he was the driver of the day. I thought he was. Brilliant drive. So, started P11, highest placed driver on the medium tyres, on fresh medium tyres. Of course, the top 3 started on medium tyres, but they were worn in from qualifying. Started P11, and then once Carlos Sainz, I'm trying to remember all the drivers here. What was it? Carlos Sainz, Lando Norris, Daniel Kvyat, Charles Leclerc, Albon, and Ricciardo. Once they all pitted, and Sergio Perez was able to go up into 4th place, having not pitted yet, that stint that Perez put in, and those laps Perez put in, were phenomenal. Because once he came back out, after his, pit stop to go onto the hard compound tyre, he came out ahead of Sainz, Norris, Albon, Leclerc, Kvyat, and Ricciardo. So he jumped all of those cars in one, short little stint. A great drive to do that, and then was pulling away very comfortably from the cars behind and was heading for 4th place. But then Max Verstappen has his tyre failure. That causes a safety car. And then Racing Point, for no real good reason, decide to pit Sergio Perez for soft tyres. Why they did that, I do not know. Surely, around Imola, and it was proven during the Grand Prix, track position is so important. Yes, it is not impossible to overtake, but at Imola, and this has been proven not only during the Grand Prix today, but at every single Grand Prix here at Imola before, track position is everything. You can be a lot slower than the car, behind you, and hold him up for a long, long, long time. So even if Ricciardo, you know, they had some pace on the restart, Sergio Perez, as long as he didn't lose position on the restart, would have got a podium. But no, they pitted him for soft tyres and he didn't really gain anything. So, yeah, awful decision. Awful, awful, awful. And when you consider that there is so little points separating them, McLaren and Renault in that fight for third in the Constructors, they cannot afford, you know, horrible decisions like that, because as you'll see later on when we get to the standings for the Constructors, it's cost them big time. Yeah, very poor decision, and Racing Point might come back to, you know, that decision might come back to haunt them big time later on. Hopefully it doesn't, but I could definitely see it, you know, coming back to haunt them later on. But guys, let me know what you thought of McLaren, Renault and Racing Point today in the live chat, and I'll read out some of your comments, and then we'll get to the final 4 teams of AlphaTauri, Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams. Count Blast says Perez is there like a dumped girlfriend who's still trying to prove she loves you, giving them his all. I think you have to say Sergio Perez really is conducting himself well. He's not, you know, like, oh, they're dropping me, I'm going to, you know, down tools and, you know, not be as good as I can and not, you know, give absolutely 100%. In fact, I would actually say that Sergio Perez, since that decision to get rid of him for Vettel has been announced, I think Perez has been better than he was before that announcement. You know, Russia, 4th place, great drive. Nürburgring, was it 4th place there? He might have got a podium at the Nürburgring had there not been a safety car, because he was catching Ricciardo very quickly, as Perez was on a lot fresher tyres compared to Daniel Ricciardo. And then Portimao, you know, got hit by Max, went to the back, got all the way up back up to P5, and only went down to P7 behind Gasly and Carlos Sainz because Racing Point put the soft compound tyres on when they should have kept him out until the end of the Grand Prix. So, and then, yeah, today, I know it was only 6th place, but he deserved to finish in 3rd place. Well, you know, deserved to finish at the front of the midfield battle, rather. I don't think he deserved a podium. I think Max deserved to be on the podium, but you know what I mean. He deserved to be winning the midfield fight. But he didn't, because his team robbed him of a podium when he has deserved a podium this season. He really has. He's driven great this season. And again, there's 2 races because of COVID. So if, you know, he had raced at Silverstone, and if you remember the second Silverstone race, Racing Point were very quick. Who knows what he could have done? Who knows what he could have done? Could have had, you know, a 4th and 5th place in the second Silverstone race, maybe a few more points in the British Grand Prix, the first Silverstone race. Who knows what he could have done? Could be currently 4th in the championship if he had completed all the races in 2020. Yeah, great season for Perez. Francisco says, do you think Renault would have picked Ricciardo if Perez stayed out? I don't think so, because, you know, Ricciardo would have lost position then to Leclerc and Albon, and I don't think Ricciardo would have passed them. So, no, I don't think Ricciardo would have done that, or Renault, rather, would have done that with Ricciardo. Right, let's have a look at some other comments here quick. Rugara says Racing Point is underperforming this season. I think I agree. I really do agree with that. It's a great comment because, as I said a moment ago, I think Racing Point do have the best car out of those 3 teams fighting for third in the Constructors, and I think proof of that is that they are so close to to being in third in the Constructors, and they have definitely the weakest driver lineup out of the 3. Ricciardo and Ocon as a driver lineup is stronger. Obviously, Sainz and Norris as a driver lineup is stronger. So I think, you know, them still being able, if I can speak English, to be up there, despite them not being as good of drivers, again, I think it does show how quick the Racing Point car is. And I think there's definitely been Grand Prix in 2020 where Racing Point have not been as good as they should have been. The first Silverstone race, Racing Point were very disappointing. I thought at Spa they were very, very disappointing. They should have done a lot better there. I think they should have been, 6th or 7th, around there. They were, 8th and 9th or 9th and 10th? It was a very poor weekend. And then, I think the other races. I think Russia, in qualifying, they weren't that great. I can't remember where Perez qualified, though, but I remember Stroll qualified 12th or 13th. Yeah, they've missed, a couple chances this season to get some very good results. I mean, of course, had the podium with Lance Stroll at Monza. But I think they could have had a podium at the Nürburgring. They could have had a podium at Austria, the first Austrian race. They should, on pace, have had a podium at the Hungaroring. Because I remember they locked out the second row. Yeah, they've definitely underperformed. But, if they can just, for the last 4 races, perform to their best, then they should finish 3rd in the Constructors with relative ease. That's Esteban Serra in the chat says, didn't like the move of Lewis drinking out of Ricciardo's shoe. Not sure why he decided to do it this time. Anyone see this as an issue? No. Who cares? To be honest. And I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm just saying, it's not really a big deal, is it? They're just having a bit of fun on the podium at the end of the day. Anyway, let's go on to AlphaTauri, who I think this weekend probably had the best midfield car, qualifying 4th and 8th for Gasly and Kvyat. And after the start of the Grand Prix, Gasly did lose position to Ricciardo, but was right up behind Ricciardo right before he had to retire the car because of a coolant leak on the Honda PU. So, massive shame for Gasly, because I think he would have been finishing in the top 5 for sure. And if he did get past Ricciardo, who knows, he probably would have been on the podium or at least in 4th place. So it's a real shame that Pierre was robbed of another great result. And I think if Gasly finishes today with Kvyat, AlphaTauri would be right behind Ferrari in the Constructors for 6th. But again, their biggest weakness this season, I think, has been, reliability. Whether that be of, say, Daniel Kvyat as a driver, but also of the Honda power unit. Also, Honda reliability hasn't been that great for Red Bull either. So, very disappointing. But Daniel Kvyat, though, great drive. Very good start. And then had a good race up until the safety car. He really did have a good race and was looking like he could get past Alex Albon if he could just get close enough coming out of the final corner, the second Ravazza onto the only DRS straight, but he couldn't get close enough. But then we had the safety car. He pitted for soft tyres. And then the restart he did, I mean, he must have been on steroids because some of the overtakes he was doing were incredible. Getting past Perez and Albon around the outside at turn 1, 2 overtakes at one corner. Phenomenal move. And then going straight up to the back of Charles Leclerc on the exit of Tosa, the hairpin. And then into Aqua Minerale in that section of the circuit, into that left-hander. The uphill left-hander. To go right round the outside. I mean, we know he has balls of steel and absolute, is a phenomenally brave driver. And that's sometimes to his detriment. But to do what he did on that restart, I mean, that was just incredible. He, this time, torpedoed in the right way. And if he had more laps, he might have got a podium. And I was honestly hoping he would get a podium because I thought it would have been a perfect summary of how mental this season has been that Daniel Kvyat is getting a podium on pure pace. Yeah, great drive by Daniel, and I'm hoping that's enough for him to keep his seat. Again, as I've said before, I think he's been good this season. I think, well, maybe not good, but decent this season. The only problem is, qualifying, he hasn't done well enough, and it's not giving him a good enough, say, opportunity to get up there in the races and get some higher points. Because I think in the races, he has had good race pace, looks after his tyres well. And I think, has been good in the Grand Prix. But because of his qualifying performances, that's what is negating me saying that he's had a good or very good or great season. But yeah, today, I think we could definitely say great drive. And I think this weekend, great weekend for Daniel. And again, as I said earlier, AlphaTauri gaining 2 points on Ferrari. So now they're only 14 points behind with 4 races to go. They can definitely get ahead of them in the Constructors, but they need more luck on their side and need Charles Leclerc to suffer some bad luck for them to get up to 6th in the Constructors. I do believe they deserve it. Finishing ahead of Ferrari. Ferrari have been shit this season, and AlphaTauri, I think, have had a pretty good season. Continuing to build on last season's great performance with, them having 2 podiums and being very close to beating Renault for 5th. I think this season, they do deserve it, but will they get it? I don't know. I hope they do, though, because they really do deserve it. Anyway, move on to the rest. Alfa Romeo, a double points finish for Alfa Romeo. Who would have thought that coming into the Grand Prix? 9th and 10th for Raikkonen and Antonio Giovannazi at his home Grand Prix. Kimi Raikkonen definitely was one of the drivers of the day. He ran, 50 laps on the same tyres and then pitted for soft tyres. And, of course, with the safety car coming out, that helped out a lot. And then Albon and Russell falling out of the Grand Prix helped him a lot to get P9. But a great stint. And Kimi still at, 40 years old now, basically, or is literally, still driving as well as he was 5-10 years ago. I mean, he wasn't even in Formula 1 10 years ago, but you know what I mean. Still driving phenomenally. Antonio Giovinazzi as well did start the Grand Prix from 20th, last place, but started on the soft compound tyre, gained 6 positions on the first lap. I think he's the only driver this season to gain a position on the first lap for every Grand Prix in 2020. So great record he has, and great start he had today that led to him being in there for when other cars fell off of the track. But yeah, very good day for Alfa Romeo. Again, showing that when it comes to pure race pace, they do have the best driver lineup and really driver car combination to have the best race pace. The Alfa Romeo, aerodynamically, I actually think is quite good. The only problem is they don't have any power, which is not their fault. So if they get a bit more power next season, then you might see Alfa Romeo up there with your AlphaTauris and, Racing Point when they become Aston Martin next year, or McLaren are having a bad weekend. Don't be surprised if Alfa Romeo are up there, because they've had a very good last few races. So, yeah, great to see them up there, and especially great to see Kimi Raikkonen still, basically 20 years after his Formula 1 debut, driving as well as he was all the way back then in 2001. Haas were awful this weekend. Qualifying, they probably should have got into the second part of qualifying, but they couldn't. And then in the race, no pace. Kevin Magnussen retired because he was physically unfit to continue because he was having headaches because of the gear shifts, I think. Romain Grosjean had no real pace. Obviously, Magnussen was hit round by Sebastian Vettel. And yeah, just overall a really poor Grand Prix as Haas are coming to the end of a very, very poor season. And then finally, Williams. Nicholas Latifi, I believe, finished in 11th place, which is a very good race for him. And I actually think he did drive very well today, so congrats to him. He had a bit of a better car. I probably would have finished in the points. But this man on screen, the man who we call Mr. Saturday, George Russell, had a great race up until the safety car. Great race. He was, before the safety car, he was P11 on pure merit. Driving very well. Great qualifying as well. Remember, in 13th place, out qualifying a works Ferrari. Great qualifying. Great race. And with, you know, Max Verstappen pulling out the race and the safety car coming out, he was then put up into the points. And with Albon later on having his spin, surely it was this man's time to finish in the points and to get Williams off the mark and possibly into a position with a few races to go of putting Haas down into last place in the Constructors. But then, under the safety car, made an absolute schoolboy error. Doing exactly what Romain Grosjean did at Baku in 2018, spinning up his cold tyres under the safety car and going into the wall at the Aqua Minerale section of the track. It's hard to feel sorry for him because he, you know, it's all his own doing, this. But it's clear that this guy just cannot have nice things, whether it's him doing it to himself or it being bad luck. But today, it was not bad luck at all. It was his own stupid fault. And he said on Twitter that it was, but you know, nothing to say. It was just his fault. That's basically what he said. Yeah, really poor mistake. Really poor. You know, with drivers falling out of the Grand Prix, he had to keep it, obviously, on the road and bring home the points. And he would have, most likely. But that mistake was not unforgivable, but quite, you know, for the team, reprehensible. Again, considering, you know, with Albon falling out the race as well, he probably would have been on for finishing in 9th place. And then Haas, they're only on 3 points in the Constructors. And with maybe another crazy race out of the final 4 races, maybe Williams could have, you know, finished second from bottom in the Constructors. Which would be a massive improvement on how awful they were last year, of course. But yeah, that mistake was reprehensible from Russell. And I feel sorry for the team because they deserved a points finish from this season. They have really improved a lot. And I think done well considering the troubles they've had. But today was, again, just awful mistake by Russell. But hopefully won't make it again. But before I go on to the drivers and constructors standings to finish off this stream, I'll come and look to see what you guys are saying in the chat. By the way, please stick around, guys, until the end of the stream, because at the end of the stream, I'm going to notify you guys as to my video uploading schedule between now and the Turkish Grand Prix weekend, and I'll also get into what I am probably going to do for the Turkish Grand Prix weekend, so make sure to stick around for that. Anyway, let's have a quick look. Find good comments here to do with these teams. Crystal Racing says Latifi is an expert at driving calmly and waiting for others to screw up. Now, Latifi's not that quick compared to the rest of the grid. But as Crystal Racing pointed out, he is, you know, good at driving calmly and picking up the pieces from other drivers and teams. And that's a very handy thing to have in your team. Because, again, if you have a mental Grand Prix, those types of drivers, you know, like a Kimi Raikkonen, who's very good at that as well, tend to be the ones getting the results. And he almost got a point at Monza as well, and that was a mental race as well. So, not the first time he's almost got a point. I think Latifi gets unfairly criticised. I actually think he's had a pretty decent, if not good season, considering I think his teammate is a very, very good driver and a very, very quick driver. I think he gets a lot of criticism unfairly, and I think definitely deserves to be in that car for next year. Is he the 20, you know, part of the 20 best drivers in the world? No, but if you're comparing him to Russell and what he's done this season in that car, I think he's done well enough for another year. Let's have a look, see if there's any more comments here. Count Blah says Giovannazi 2017 binned it 2 times on the same track on his debut last year, and this year he's binned it on his own. I'm not impressed with him at all. I disagree, and I know you'll remember that when he came back in full time to Formula One in 2019, the first half of 2019, I was not a fan of Antonio driving wise. In the first half of 2019, I thought he was not doing anywhere near enough compared to Kimi Raikkonen. And I thought if he continued like that, he'd be dropped for 2020. But second half of 2019, I thought he did very well. His qualifying performances against Kimi Raikkonen were very good, and they still are this season, considering, again, it's Kimi Raikkonen. His race pace is improving. Still needs some work, but it is improving, and it's a lot better than it was. And yeah, I think he definitely deserves another year. He's not done anything this season that I think is worthy of being off the grid. Has he been amazing? No, but not every driver on the grid has been amazing, and I think he definitely does deserve another year, because I think if that Alfa Romeo next year does improve how I think it will, if Ferrari increase the amount of power they're going to have, I think Antonio will surprise you kind of in a way Pierre Gasly has. I don't think he'll be that good. I don't think he'll be winning races and be, qualifying in the top 10 every single weekend, basically. But I think you'll be surprised what he could do in a car that's a bit better and helping him out a bit more. Because this current Alfa Romeo is not. Fantastico asks, do you think Ferrari are a factor for third in the Constructors? Absolutely fuck no. They are not. They are not in that fight, and they don't deserve to be. I know they're only 32 points off, but they're not in that fight because Charles Leclerc in the final 4 races, he's going to have a Grand Prix where he doesn't finish, or he doesn't get as good as a result as he has been previously, and he's going to struggle at one of the final 4 races, and that's what's going to mean that Ferrari finish in 6th. And also, remember, we have 2 races at Bahrain, and that is a power track. And the second Bahrain race is basically an oval race, so Ferrari are not really going to have any chance of scoring points, I don't think, in those 2 Bahrain races. Maybe they could nick a point or 2 if they get lucky in the first one, but in the second one, they're not finishing the points at all. It's going to be like Spa. That second Bahrain race, if not even worse than that. So, yeah, Ferrari, they're not going to finish any higher than 6th. That's the best they can do. Let me see if there's any other comments that I have missed. Esteban Sarah, fantastic stream. Thanks for the content. Thank you very much. I haven't seen you before in the chat. So if you are new, don't forget to subscribe if you are new to the channel, because I am going to be doing this, these streams for every race weekend, until the end of the season. And by the way, again, please stick around to the end of the stream, which will be in about 10 minutes, so I can update you guys as to the content for the next, say, 2 weeks or so. Basically, between now and the Turkish Grand Prix, and I'll also let you know what the plan is at the moment for the Turkish Grand Prix weekend, and also let you know the plan for watch-alongs, because of course I did 2 yesterday as a test to whether I want to do them again, and I did enjoy them, and I do want to do them again, so I'll let you guys know in a moment. But anyway, forgetting that, let's finally finish off with the drivers and constructors standings after this weekend's Grand Prix. So the drivers' standings, Lewis Hamilton is leading by almost 100 points. I think he can wrap it up, the driver's title, in Turkey. I don't know what the permutations are, but I think he possibly could. Valtteri Bottas 2nd, Max Verstappen 3rd, Daniel Ricciardo holding on to 4th with another great drive, Charles Leclerc 5th, Perez 6th, and then Norris 7th. Sainz goes above Albon for 8th. Gasly down to 10th because of retirement. And then Stroll stays in P11. And then Ocon still in 12th. Kvyat goes above Vettel for 13th. Vettel now down to 14th. Hulkenberg 15th in the Racing Point. Still ahead of the Alfa Romeo, Haas and Williams drivers. Just shows you how great the Racing Point car is compared to those cars. And then Raikkonen goes back ahead of Antonio Giovanazzi for 16th and 17th. Romain Grosjean 18th, 19th Magnussen, 20th Latifi, and 21st is Russell. But for me, the more exciting standings are the Constructors, and they have, certainly in that big fight for third, they have changed around quite a bit. So Mercedes, as you can see, they're champions on 479 points. 11 race wins they've had this season. Red Bull second, but not scoring any points today. But now in third, from fifth, they started the Grand Prix in fifth in the Constructors, but finish it in third to Renault. But they are only 1 point ahead of not just McLaren, but Racing Point as well. So 1 point separating 3 teams in a fight in the Constructors that really could decide those teams' futures in terms of where they go in Formula 1. I cannot wait for Turkey to see how Renault, McLaren and Racing Point do. Ferrari 6th on 103. AlphaTauri closed the gap by 2 to them. Only 14 points behind. Also looking out a lot to see what happens in Turkey between those two. Alfa Romeo 8th on 8 points. Haas 9th on 3 points. And then Williams, of course, 10th with no points at all. But guys, there you go. That is the 2020 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix weekend at Imola, or what is in my head, the San Marino Grand Prix. Now, before I go, obviously, thank you guys for coming along, and I've had the most amount of viewers today that I've had since I come back, so thank you guys very, very much for coming to this stream, being a part of it, you know, chatting in the live chat, posting your comments and all of that. Thank you very, very much for that. I really do appreciate it. Now let me get on to what the content is for the next couple of weeks. So there'll be one video next week, hopefully, on Thursday or Friday, most likely Friday, and that will be a review of the weekend here at Imola. Similar to the one I did for the Portuguese Grand Prix. If you haven't seen that yet, make sure to do so. Link below in the description. You guys seem to like the format of those videos a lot, so yeah, if you haven't seen it yet, I'm sure you'll probably like it as well. I'm going to do that for this weekend's Grand Prix as well. Yeah, uploading the 2020 Emilia Romagna Grand Prix weekend review probably on Friday. And then, of course, the week after that, the weekend after that even, we have the Turkish Grand Prix. Now, I am thinking of uploading another recorded video before the Turkish Grand Prix weekend. Say Wednesday or Thursday time. It won't be a preview for the Turkish Grand Prix, I can tell you that, because I do not want to do a preview, because I don't think I can really be bothered to. It might be, you know, one of those videos on a certain team or a certain driver. I don't know who it will be yet. I'm not saying this is a guarantee it's going to happen. I am thinking of doing a video before that Grand Prix weekend on a team or driver. Isn't confirmed yet, but when it is, I'll make sure to let you guys know either on my Discord or on the community tab of my page. So subscribe to the channel and hit the notifications bell so you're notified as to when I'm going to upload. And also make sure to join the Discord so you know in there also when I'm going to upload. Now, the Turkish Grand Prix weekend, there will not be any watch-alongs. The reason that is because I have a very important thing to go to on the Monday after the Turkish Grand Prix. I have my first, basically, day at my new job. So I don't want to completely burn myself out, basically, and be knackered for that. But I will be doing streams for that weekend. So I'm going to do a qualifying reaction stream at 2 PM UK time, which is about an hour after qualifying finishes for the qualifying at the Turkish Grand Prix. And then I will do a race reaction the day after at the same time, 2 PM UK time. That, though, will be about 2 hours after the race finishes. So that is the schedule that I'm hoping to have for the next fortnight. possibly 2 recorded videos and 2 streams heading your way. And then when it comes to watch-alongs, the hope is that I'm going to bring them back again for the Bahrain races. I don't know when, you know, or what sessions I'm going to be able to do, because that does depend on my new job and, you know, if I'm available or not. If I am, then great. I'll be able to decide what I want to do by myself. But if I can't, then I'll have to work around it and find another way of, you know, doing maybe another session that I can do. So I'll let you guys know for Bahrain, you know, what certain sessions I'm going to be doing a watch along for. But the plan is, if I can, I will be bringing the watch alongs back for Bahrain. And probably, if I'm able to, and I feel up to it mentally and physically, I will probably be doing a race watch along for the Bahrain and Sakhir Grand Prix. The Sakhir Grand Prix, of course, is the second Bahrain race. So that's the plan going forward. Again, great to hear from you guys again, see you guys here. Hopefully you're all doing well in this very hellish world that we're all living in at the moment. But, you know, with this, you know, stream, make sure to like it, share it everywhere, subscribe to the channel for more content like this. Follow me on the Discord. Make sure to join the server. We've got almost 500 people in our server, and it's very active. If you want to talk to other people about F1, make sure to join that. Well, if you want to send me an email for any reason, then it is down below, chazzahdf1@gmail.com. As well, check out my other videos from earlier this week, the 2 watch-alongs from yesterday, and also my review of the Portuguese Grand Prix weekend. And until my weekend review of the Emilia Romagna Grand Prix, which will be coming out most likely on Friday, until next time, it's been me, Chazza HD. Goodbye.